trade with.
Basically trade with. Then we have sincerely trade winds, and then we have individual broker by the US truck driver.
Yeah, we know. With truck driver. Oh,
What did it cost? She never is.
uh-huh.
That she was a defensive driving course.
I don't know, sir.
It's class 4 or something.
No class 3.
Class 3. Oh, okay. You have it?
Morning. All alone it was a fever, a cold sweat I'd added believer. Oh, now tell
pirates, yes, they robbed soldiers to the merchant ship. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hands was made strong by the hands of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? Is all I ever ask. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Ooh, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever ask. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Yeah. Ooh, da da dee da dee da dee. Ooh, 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 yeah. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Whoa! Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Yes, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? Is all I ever ask. Redemption songs is all I ever ask. Redemption songs, these songs of freedom, these songs of freedom, these songs of freedom.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, give a hand for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Band. Serving with pride and playing with skill. We're about to begin this morning's proceedings. And as usual, we begin with a procession of the governors. Leading off the procession this morning is the governor for the British Overseas Territories, Anguilla, British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Montserrat, and the Turks and Caicos Islands, Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Donaldson Romeo. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor for Antigua and Barbuda, Senator the Honorable Lennox Weston. We now have the Governor for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Mr. Marlon Johnson. Let's welcome the Governor for Barbados, the Honorable Marsha Cattle. Governor for Belize, Mr. Joseph Waite. Let's welcome the Governor for Brazil, Mr. Marcos Guimarães. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor for Canada, Ms. Wendy Drukier. We now have the Governor for the People's Republic of China, Mrs. Ming Ai. Let's welcome Governor for Colombia, Ms. Lina Mondragon. Here's the Governor for the Commonwealth of Dominica, the Honorable Francine Baron. Let's welcome Governor for Germany, Mr. Dominic Ziller. Welcome our Governor for Grenada, the Honorable Oliver Joseph. Governor for Guyana, the Honorable Winston Jordan. And now Governor for Haiti, Mr. Leslie Etienne. Governor for Italy, Mr. Adolfo Di Carluccio. Let's welcome Governor for Jamaica, Dr. the Honorable Nigel Clark. We now have the Governor for Mexico, Mr. Gabriel Loyero. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Governor for St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. Welcome the Governor for St. Lucia, the Honorable Guy Joseph. Governor for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez. Please welcome the Governor for the United Kingdom, Mr. Chris Hindley. Governor for Venezuela, the Ambassador Raul Licausi. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to invite the head table, leading off with Mr. Volville Forsyth, the Assistant Bank Secretary of the Caribbean Development Bank. Next on the head table will be Vice President Operations, Ms. Monica LaBennett. Vice President, Corporate Services and Bank Secretary, Mrs. Yvette Lemonesil. And now, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Warren Smith. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the Chairman of the Board of Governors and Governor for Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis. We now invite the Acting Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Colm Imber, to join us at the head table. Remain standing for the invocation by representative of the interreligious organization, Stern Gab.
A pleasant good morning. All heads. O Lord, confirm and aid this assemblage. Confirm these souls through the breath of thy Holy Spirit. Enlighten the eyes by thy vision of these radiant lights, and make the ears joyful through the anthems of thy call to service. O God, Verily, we have gathered here in the fragrance of thy love. We have turned to thy kingdom. We seek naught save thee, and desire nothing save thy good pleasure. O God, let this be thy manna from heaven, and grant that this assemblage may be the concourse of thy supreme ones. May they be the quickening cause of thy love to humanity, and source of illumination to the human race. May they be the instruments of thy guidance upon earth. Verily, thou art the powerful, thou art the bestower, thou art the forgiver, thou art the Almighty.
You may be seated. We now turn the proceedings over to Chairman of the Board of Governors, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis.
Thank you very kindly. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Colum Imbert, Acting Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and Minister of Finance, heads of government, colleagues and fellow members of the Parliament and Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. William Warren Smith, distinguished governors and members of the Board of Directors of the Caribbean Development Bank, representatives of the development community, members of the diplomatic corps, vice presidents, and other members of staff of the bank, cabinet secretary, permanent secretaries, and other members of staff of the Public Service of Trinidad and Tobago, delegates, guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, Eid Mubarak to my Muslim brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to officially open this meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank. And on behalf of the government and people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all delegates. It is indeed both an honor and a privilege for Trinidad and Tobago to host this 49th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, and for me to serve as chair of this meeting as the governor for Trinidad and Tobago. The annual Board of Governors meeting is a very important event for our region. The high-level policy discussions that are expected to take place over the ensuing days and the decisions emanating therefrom will undoubtedly serve to strengthen even further our efforts and aspirations towards sustainable development. This year's theme, transformation, is especially pertinent to the region as this meeting presents an opportunity for the exchange of ideas, approaches, and innovation, and the further opportunity for us to learn from each other whilst we place the region's development at the forefront. This year's theme also represents an extension of last year's, as the region seeks to progress from a period of resilience building to one where our efforts now include the pursuit of a comprehensive set of transformational strategies that will allow us to firmly tackle the modern and complex challenges that present themselves while simultaneously stimulating growth and development in the region. There can be no doubt that the multifaceted challenges currently facing us as small island developing states require a bold, risk-taking, no-nonsense approach. It requires the adoption of new and innovative policies, programs, utilization of new ways of financing, and the nurturing of existing partnerships, even as we seek out new ones. The region, however, should not be defined by the challenges that we face. Rather, it is the manner in which we respond to and overcome them that will further define who we are as a people. We have a storied history and share a rich cultural heritage and identity of which we can all be proud. My questions to you are these. How do we rise above these emergent challenges? In a world where political and economic blocs are seemingly being broken and tariff wars are escalating amongst our major trading partners, how do we reposition ourselves as a region so that our collective voice is heard in the international market space? How do we transform into the resilient, productive, innovative countries prepared to face the next few decades when, in a very real sense, the jobs which will be required are not yet even named? Colleagues, this call for transformation is not just a fancy buzzword attached to this meeting. In fact, it truly represents our endeavor to follow through and remain committed to continuously evolving and improving in our efforts to develop solutions and strategies to drive economic and social transformation in the Caribbean. Fundamental to this kind of development and change is the need for transformative interventions to address the challenges that we currently face. Internationally, the imminent threat of human-driven climate change and pollution presents developmental challenges. Collaboration, cooperation, and consensus as a region, the right set of policies is therefore pivotal to managing ever-changing dynamics. The digital environment continues to change the way we live, work, and communicate as more of our traditional jobs are becoming obsolete and the flow of work to which we have grown accustomed is disrupted. Disruption, therefore, is becoming the new normal. The speed at which this fourth industrial revolution is unfolding must of necessity force those of us who occupy the seat of governance to both rethink our country's growth strategies and how existing organizations like our bank can create added value to its members. The region's private sector is also key and is a partner that must be encouraged to have greater involvement in our development agenda, as they have a critical role to play as a driver of growth and development. It is often said that firms compete, but nations don't. In this regard, it is our duty as regional policymakers to lay the foundation and create a business-friendly environment which attracts investment, enabling the private sector to innovate and thrive so that we can harness the true potential of our creativity. But what does this mean? It means that there is need to strengthen our institutional capacities at the domestic and regional levels to improve the way we do business and facilitate the type of private sector-led growth that we desire. Having said this, and in the midst of all our challenges and opportunities, we acknowledge that the Caribbean Development Bank stands out as a regional institution which is well-positioned to foster the kind of collaboration that is required to achieve the development agenda of its borrowing member countries. Indeed, our bank has first-hand knowledge of the challenges faced in and by the region. It is this very bank which has repeatedly come to the rescue of its members in times of crisis. The extreme weather events that occurred in the region in 2017 and 2018 are stark reminders of this. And Trinidad and Tobago was not spared the brunt of this, and I wish to offer at this time, again, my sincerest gratitude to the President and staff of the bank for being one of the first financial institutions to offer assistance to our government in the face of adversity. But Prime Minister, President, fellow governors, ladies and gentlemen, this is a rapidly changing world. And at this time, I wish to commend the bank for adapting to this shifting landscape by transforming itself, not only to meet the current needs of its borrowing member countries, but by being even more proactive and innovative with its targeted interventions. I also wish to take this opportunity to thank the bank for insisting that the borrowing member countries rise to the new challenges and that the use of technology becomes an integral part of how we as governments operate. The bank has required us to squarely face the changing dynamics and to change our approaches to development and to develop modern approaches to development. The bank continues to prove that it is well positioned to bridge the gap between our varying cultures and ideologies, especially in the light of an increasingly insular world. Fellow governors, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to commend the President of the bank, the management team, and the CDB Board of Directors on the work undertaken over the last year. The CDB has provided tremendous support to its BMCs for much-needed reform and action geared towards building macroeconomic resilience, environmental sustainability, productivity, and competitiveness. As the bank prepares to celebrate its 50th anniversary, we must recognize the significant efforts being made in its internal reform agenda, all designed to enhance institutional efficiency, effectiveness, and relevance. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank the staff of the bank for its continued support to Trinidad and Tobago. We are grateful for the assistance received over the past years, and specifically over the past year, and certainly look forward to the bank playing a more prominent role in our country's developmental thrust. Mr. President, governors, ladies and gentlemen, I pray that our deliberations will be fruitful and the exchanges undertaken are done with a view to placing the region's developmental agenda at the forefront. I certainly hope that the arrangements, and now I really come to the welcome. I certainly hope that the arrangements that we have put in place for the hosting of this meeting will meet your expectations, and I thank those of you who have already commended us on what you have experienced thus far. Ours is the intention to create an atmosphere that is both comfortable and conducive to productivity, and one that will encourage you to visit terrific Trinidad and tranquil Tobago again for a full tourist experience. As chairman of this 49th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, and on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, I hereby declare this meeting officially open, and once again welcome each and every one of you to our beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very kindly. Ladies and gentlemen, I now invite my colleague governors who will reply to my welcome address. Thank you. I invite the Governor for St. Kitts and Nevis, who will reply on behalf of the borrowing member countries.
Madam Chair, thank you. And I bring you the greetings of the borrowing member states, and more particularly, that of the government and people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to adopt the protocol that was ably led before my intervention, but to say how pleased we are to be here in the Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago and to be part of this 49th annual meeting of the board. We want to place and record our commendation for the hospitality and the arrangements that have been made so far for our participation at this important meeting. And of course, we thank the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago for being at their usual best as hosts. The theme of transformation, of course, is an important one for all of us. And we are happy that we are focusing on that particular matter at this time. Indeed, the challenges which we face are many, and we would hope that an institution as a CDB will provide leadership in assisting us in meandering some of the difficult contours which you outlined in your speech. We are still left with the perennial problem of poverty within our region, and how we are going to be able to bring more people out of the periphery of the socioeconomic life and to be full participant in our sub-region. And so beyond the poverty assessment surveys in which the bank has been quite helpful, we are hoping that we could have out of the discussion the delineation of the appropriate transformational strategies to which you make reference to assist us in this regard. And in the context of the bank's own borrowing membership, we are still concerned with respect to the status of small island developing states, such as St. Kitts and Nevis in that context. And we are still concerned that a principle with which we have been fighting for a long time, the graduation of states basically on account of their per capita GDP, still finds some acceptance within the bank. And that for us is a matter of concern because it is critical for us being able to pursue the pathway of transformation. So that is a matter that we hope that we can resolve. Importantly, the graduation, which on one hand can be seen for positive light, has the downside of making access to development financing so much more difficult and onerous for us all. And so we would not wish that that particular thought process find residence within our own CDB. We are challenged as a region in the context of crime and violence, and this is so among too many of the member states or the borrowing member states. And we would hope again that as part of the transformation of which you speak, and which is the theme for this particular session, that we will find ways of addressing those matters, bringing again more people into the mainstream, providing them with the opportunities so that they can pursue their own pathways for development. The matter which we have chosen for critical analysis over the next 2 days are an important one. The role of agriculture and it being able to play a much more significant role in our development is one that has long eluded us. We have had some very big ideas at times regarding how we can do more. There was, for example, the Manning Initiative. There was, for example, the initiative put forward by the president, Jack Deere, I think it was, about how we can utilize their own landscape to assist and ensure that in the region we can do more for food security. For many of the borrowing member countries, the leakage from food importation is a significant one. And if we could really harness that within the context of the region, we could have substantial improvement in our economic growth rates. The growth rates we have accepted are not high enough to allow us to be able to do the things that our people, citizens and residents expect us to do. So how we are going to be able to, as it were, transform agriculture to play its rightful place in the context of health issues which are critical, and in the context of our own battle with NDCs, that is going to be important. And of course, in the context of food security, we are talking of another matter. But agriculture playing a much more constructive role in dealing with our balance of payment issues certainly is going to be important, and we have to have oneness in moving forward to be able to deal with this particular matter of agriculture and the embracing of the opportunities. The question of resilience is one will always be with us, and resilience to deal with the many natural and man-made disasters and issues which we confront is going to be important. How we are going to buffer that? What new instruments are we going to be able to bring to the pool? And in the context of our own experience with hurricanes and the need usually for government and the society to be able to respond, we have to look at new models and instruments. I want to hail the QIF. Not that QIF in the context of St. Kitts and Nevis has been significant in terms of the amount it brings, but I hail it because it provides a quick response mechanism. And in the context of some of the challenges which we face after these disasters, there are going to be need for quick responses if we are going to really be resilient, if we are going to be able to harmonize hope within the population to ensure that we can respond in important ways. 2 weeks ago, at an important meeting in Washington, D.C., involving the World Bank and the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, our central bank, the matter of the catastrophic drawdown option had been raised as providing another potential instrument for engagement of countries impacted by adversities. However, of course, there is the usual caveat about who can access those financial resources. And in that regard, the matter of those who are graduated can be sidelined, although the World Bank did say that there was an alternative window being looked at for those who would not readily be able to access the international development assistance. So there is much that is needed. The third theme that has been pointed out for discussion is, of course, critical, the digital Caribbean, and ensuring that for us it means inclusive participation, reaching all our people in cities, in urban settlements, and in the rural riversides of the Caribbean region. This is going to be critical because this is going to become another indicator of our own ability to participate in the modern global environment, and it also provides opportunities as an enabler for economic growth and driver for economic growth. And so we have to ensure that we develop our own digital capacity. But most importantly with that would be the question of affordability and accessibility. And so we are going to have to move beyond the conceptualization of this within jurisdictional confines of member states to having a regional build-out of our infrastructure, our broadband, and all the other issues related to that, and importantly, providing entrepreneurial leadership in the digital economy. So we are happy to be here, and we are happy that we continue to focus on the perennial challenge which has faced our region from time immemorial, the challenge of development that is inclusive, development that is taking place at a rapid enough rate to ensure that our young and our vulnerable population can feel part of progress and development in the region. So I thank you and commend your opening statement, and thank you again for undertaking to be a wonderful host. I did not see in the program, though, an opportunity to visit Tobago. Perhaps you will correct that before end of day. But thank you very much.
Thank you very kindly, Prime Minister Harris. And let me just assure you that there is a visit to Tobago on Friday. And I trust you will take the opportunity to visit. Thank you very kindly for your words. I now call on the Governor from Mexico on behalf of the regional non-borrowing members. And Governor, may I indicate that you are either free to come to the lectern or you can stay in place. So the Governor for Mexico on behalf of the regional non-borrowing members.
Distinguished Chairman of the Board of Governors, distinguished governors, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Warren Smith, directors, management, and staff of the CDB. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the regional non-borrowing members countries, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, and Mexico, I would like to thank the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the people of the country for hosting the 49th annual meeting of the Boards of Governors. I would also like to thank the CDB management and staff for all the work done through this year in order to keep strengthening the bank, as well as for the efforts done towards a successful meeting. Today and tomorrow, we will be participating on activities that will help us achieve basically two objectives. First, review and reflect the efforts done during the last years. And second, and probably more important, is to discuss the priorities and strategies that will guide our activities and goals for the next years. The Caribbean Development Bank has played a crucial role for the region's development since its very inception, and we have supported activities that the bank has undertaken to reach its strategic initiatives during last years. During this meeting, reviewing the actions implemented during 2019 will help us understand what the bank has developed, the comparative advantage that we have, and the lessons learned that need to be taken into account for the strategic framework 2020 and 2024. In this changing world, it is critical to continue undertaking efforts towards seeking a sustainable economy by strengthening and adding resilience to the region's external vulnerabilities, and thus achieve a greater and more lasting development impact. Digital transformation, blue economy, and private sector engagement, among others, are definitely sectors that should be considered and analyzed in order to maintain the active bank that meets the current needs of the region. I would like to end my intervention by expressing our commitment to participate actively on the discussions and to reaffirm our support to the bank to continue achieving its mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very kindly, Governor. I now invite the Governor for Germany on behalf of the non-regional members.
So I just came here to be closer to you. Prime Minister, Mr. President, Madam Chair, government officials of Trinidad and Tobago, officials of the bank, fellow governors, delegates, observers. It's an honor for me to be here and to be asked to respond on behalf of the non-regional member countries. And if I may start with something very personal, more than 20 years ago when I started my career at the ministry, I had an excellent opportunity. I had the opportunity to take part in a seminar with Dennis Meadows, founding father of the Club of Rome. And at the end he said, well, normally we British tend to wish each other, may you live in interesting times. And he continued, you young people may live in more interesting times than you may like. And more than 20 years later, indeed we are living in interesting times. We are facing climate change. We are facing dramatic developments concerning the global public goods, threats to biodiversity, plastic waste contaminating our oceans and thus the food chain, many other dramatic developments, not the least of which is that, globally spoken, we still have not managed to decouple economic growth from using up scarce natural resources, to decouple economic growth also from carbon dioxide emissions. These are the long-term developments. In shorter terms, we are also facing considerable threats to the world economy, trade issues between major players, threatening to escalate to something like a trade war. We see rising risks of a downturn in the global economy, volatility of commodity prices, and all this leads to a certain reluctance to invest, especially for private enterprises to invest in developing countries. And at this age of the rule of rating agencies, also a reluctance of private enterprises and banks to invest in countries with average ratings or below average ratings. Against this trend, there's an uptake in growth in the Caribbean. That's the good news. The bad news being that the region is still behind global growth levels. Therefore, the mission of this bank should be to assist in bringing the Caribbean not just up to the average of global growth, but to assist in making this region a leader in global growth, and to overcome also the specific vulnerabilities of the countries in the Caribbean. Obviously, the key vulnerability is climate change and the extreme weather events, hurricanes, floods, rising sea levels that result from climate change. Therefore, one of our core objectives must be to make the region more resilient with regards to climate change. It's our firm belief that the region should also lead by example in preventing climate change. How could an institution be credible? An institution whose member countries are among those most affected by climate change if it did not commit itself to do everything to avoid the planet crossing the line of 1.5 degrees of global warming. Therefore, it should go without saying that the bank should refrain from fostering fossil fuel projects and carbon-intensive programs. That's the no-nonsense approach the central bank governor mentioned, at least from my point of view. The hurricanes in 2017 have demonstrated how quick and competent the bank can respond to natural disaster challenges. It did a really excellent job. The top management as well as the staff, they feel instinctively where the needs of those affected lie. You know how the traumatic events will also engender psychosocial reactions, hamper investments, etc. The bank goes the extra mile. This is the best news those affected could get in such dire situations. If you now go green and bring along the same commitment in embracing renewables and green technologies, the Caribbean Development Bank might become an even more important player on the field of sustainability. I have the pleasure to announce that Germany will support you by seconding an expert on climate finance to this bank. A second important thing to garner growth is the mobilization of the private sector. Easier said than done. Even more so as this is some kind of buzzword for the whole panoply of multilateral banks, UN organizations, bilateral players. Everybody is always preaching to the choir that we should mobilize private sector investments. But how can we add value? How can this bank add value? When it gets more concrete, sometimes answers become a lot less concrete. How can we avoid setting wrong incentives? How can we not support those who are going to invest anyway and just looking for windfall benefits? And instead make the difference and enable those who are still hesitant, if not reluctant to invest, to overcome the obstacles they perceive. In this context, it may become necessary to also cover risks, to look into guarantee instruments and other tools designed to leverage funding. The challenge will be to be meaningful, taking real risks without endangering the rating. So there will be a need to spread the risks, to diversify, to share burden, potentially also to cooperate with other players, bilateral as well as multilaterals. We are happy to organize a roadshow for CDB in Germany in order to attract additional German and European investors to the region, and we encourage other non-regional members to do likewise. Another big buzzword is digitalization. Yesterday's lecture gave insight into the potential digitalization is carrying for us. Any institution with self-respect will declare to you that, yes, this is an area that has to be looked into when it comes to more concrete details. Responses yet will again become rather vague. So it goes without saying that the Caribbean countries need digitalization, but they need a well-built framework for that. And the bank can be of assistance, especially in creating, for example, one-stop-shop administrations, where potential investors from abroad as well as from the countries themselves get everything they need digitally, like it was illustrated yesterday in the lecture. Plus, we could make better use of the potential of digitalization for education, to leave no one behind, not even the people in the more remote areas of the countries. Let's look deeper also in how we can become more meaningful on that. Finally, let me emphasize how important this bank is to Germany. Our bilateral cooperation with the Caribbean is limited, I know that. We mostly cooperate via regional TA schemes. We serve our partners in this region via this bank. Therefore, this bank is so extremely important to us. We would like to see it flourish. Next year will be the 50th anniversary. We would like, as you said yesterday, Mr. President, to see it grow and flourish for another 50 years. And we would like to make CDB even more sustainable, even more resilient, even more efficient, even more customer-oriented in an increasingly competitive surrounding. The Nobel Prize-winning Sir Naipaul from Trinidad and Tobago once said, we need to garner big effects out of small things. This is a comparatively small development bank compared with the African Bank, the Asian Bank, the World Bank. But this comparatively small bank can make a big difference if it focuses on its strength and on its efficiency, and I'm seeing that this bank is on an excellent way to do so, and I congratulate the management and the president for being so motivated and such a great team to help us deliver to this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very kindly, Governor, for Germany. I now invite the President of the Caribbean Development Bank to deliver his statement.
Chairman of the 49th Annual Meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, the Honorable Colm Imbert, Minister of Finance and Acting Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Alan Chastanet, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honorable Donaldson Romeo, Premier of Montserrat, ministers of government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and other ministers of government, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the Board of Governors and Board of Directors of CDB, observers, guests, management and staff of the Caribbean Development Bank, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. As we touched down at Piarco Airport on Saturday evening, my mind went back to 1968, when I, as a 16-year-old, first set foot on this beguiling Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Way back then, I was mesmerized by the diversity and uniqueness of its culture, the infectious energy of its people, and the natural beauty of these two islands. The national motto, "Together we aspire, together we achieve," is a rallying cry for our region as we forge forward to the next decade of delivering on the promise of a Caribbean that is prosperous and more equal. This morning, we are honored to have with us on the platform the Minister of Finance and the Acting Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Colm Imbert. Thank you, Minister Imbert. And on behalf of the Board of Governors, the Board of Directors, the management and staff of CDB, I want to thank your government for agreeing to host our governors' meeting this year. Let me also acknowledge the chair of CDB's Board of Governors for 2019 and the dynamic Minister of Planning of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Camille Robinson-Regis. Thank you, Minister Robinson-Regis, for your continuing staunch advocacy of CDB and for taking time out from your busy schedule to spend a whole day at our headquarters on April 10th this year. In fulfilling her role, ladies and gentlemen, as chair, she met and exchanged views with our management team and our staff. We appreciated her frank advice and sage counsel on how we can be more effective in our daily work. The theme of our annual meeting this week is expressed in one word: transformation. It is inspired by a growing sense that I have, and which is shared by many of my colleagues at the CDB, and I dare say across our region, that we are running out of time. We are moving too slowly in doing those things which will ensure that by the year 2030, our region will have delivered on our promise to eliminate poverty and to reduce inequality. The theme is also consistent with our conviction at the CDB that our borrowing member countries are, for the most part, now on the right track. They are at varying stages of embracing the correct policies and learning from the successes and the mistakes of other countries, even here in the Caribbean. This is encouraging. However, the main thrust of my remarks this morning is that we'll have to step up the pace of implementation of our reform agenda. In so doing, I will return to the core challenges which all of our BMCs will have to address and the new areas of opportunity which they must seize if we are not to be left behind. I will also share some of the ongoing and proposed reforms right here in the Caribbean Development Bank and how they will support a revision of our suite of products, enhance the quality and speed of engagement with our clients, and strengthen the bank's financial performance through improved efficiency. At the beginning of this century, a number of Caribbean governments signaled their aspiration to develop societies that are prosperous, socially just, and globally competitive by at least the year 2030. This was buttressed by comprehensive long-range planning with specific targets and timelines for achievement. These countries include Barbados, Belize, Jamaica, St. Lucia, and Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago has now revised its target year to 2030. For the most part, these ambitious plans align with the objectives of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, a global blueprint for ending poverty and achieving a level of human development that is fair and inclusive and offers a more sustainable future for all of us. This agenda challenges us to refashion our borrowing member countries so that our people become the ultimate beneficiaries of sustainable development and shared prosperity. There is an expectation that this change will improve our people's well-being by creating greater access to decent jobs, lead to a closer alignment between labor market requirements and the quality of skills provided by our education systems, foster the emergence of appropriate ecosystem to unleash the dynamism of the medium, small, and micro enterprises, and offer adequate protection for vulnerable and disadvantaged groups in the society. In a nutshell, no one is to be left behind. We have to acknowledge, ladies and gentlemen, that our region is off track in delivering on the promise of prosperity and social justice for our people. Unemployment remains at unacceptably high levels in many of our countries. Economic, social, and environmental vulnerabilities are increasing. Citizen security is under threat, and poverty levels are not falling fast enough. These difficulties have been exacerbated, as we have heard before, by lackluster economic growth, unsustainable national indebtedness, and weak fiscal management. We need to ask ourselves, therefore, is 2030 still an achievable time frame for delivering on this promise? I must hold my hand up and say that my conviction is that, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So how can we get it done? Where do we start? First, we need to reflect on the reasons for the derailment. Next, we must draw lessons from the experience and adjust our plans and strategies accordingly. Then, most importantly, we must accelerate the pace at which corrective measures are put in place. What then contributed to the derailment? In my humble view, the main factors were: one, the global financial crisis of 2008 and the Great Recession which followed, the volatility of the international petroleum markets and depressed prices for the commodity exports, the increased frequency and intensity of tropical cyclones and other climate actions, an unfavorable business environment in which the pace and breadth of doing business reforms lagged behind the rest of the world, and inadequate fiscal and debt management. The combination of these factors contributed to the region-wide deceleration of economic activity since the peak of the global financial crisis in 2009. Economic growth slowed to less than 1% per annum between 2009 and 2018. Foreign reserves declined, at times dropping close to or below the international benchmark of 3 months of imports. Weakening external positions, coupled with poor fiscal performances, led to an acute buildup of public debt. At the end of 2018, national debt exceeded the international benchmark of 60% of gross domestic product in at least 10 borrowing members, with one reporting debt in excess of 100% of GDP. Further, our BMCs, which are mainly small island, developing, and low-lying coastal states, are being adversely impacted by climate variability and sea level rise, with the negative impact estimated to range from 5% to as high as 30% of GDP. Many of the BMCs have begun to address these problems. That is the good news. St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, Jamaica, and now Barbados have undertaken extremely difficult reforms to respond to their fiscal and debt challenges. Trinidad and Tobago is pursuing a similar reform agenda. These reforms are all addressing improvements in the business. The reforms are also addressing improvements in the business environment, but we'll return to that point anon. In response to the climate threat, virtually all of CDB's BMCs now purchase CRIF parametric insurance cover against hurricanes, flooding, and earthquakes. This is gratifying. CRIF is a key development partner with the Caribbean Development Bank. However, in many instances, all of the perils are either not covered or the coverage is inadequate relative to the assessed risk. Other instruments such as cat bonds and fiscal buffers are also now being deployed by some BMCs to ensure that funding is readily available for reconstruction in the event of a natural disaster. Additionally, the climate proofing of existing infrastructure, including along our coastal zones, require accelerated attention because climate change is intensifying. Responding appropriately to external economic shocks also calls for added attention being paid to building resilience to these shocks. Maximizing the agriculture sector's potential to reduce exposure to volatile prices for imports of food promises to do just that. A similar opportunity now obtains with rapid improvements in the use of technology, especially for the exploitation of indigenous renewable sources of energy and for improving energy efficiency. The factors, ladies and gentlemen, which have interrupted our region's progress are multifaceted, but are in the main external, environmental, and economic shocks. We have also learned that we can take specific actions to become more resilient to such events and to those threats. It is now old hat that economic growth is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for reducing poverty. And it is stale news to announce that the average growth of Caribbean countries underperforms that of other small island developing states. We also broadly accept that a conducive business environment is critical to attracting domestic and international private investment, a key ingredient of increasing growth. I return to the World Bank's Doing Business report, which is also now a widely recognized guide for identifying attractive countries for investment. Importantly, the report outlines a set of regulations that either enhance or constrain business activity. Most of our countries, most of our governments have adopted these indicators as a measure of progress made in improving the business environment. This notwithstanding, the 2019 report shows that our region's average performance has declined noticeably from 81 out of 181 countries in 2009 to 126 out of 190 countries in 2019. That's not good news, ladies and gentlemen. These results point to a disappointing lack of progress and are a stark reminder that considerable work still needs to be done in this area to accelerate growth and to improve our region's chances of achieving the SDGs by 2030. What it also signals is a clear opportunity to focus on that complex of business-related reforms, which when combined with other reforms can translate into accelerated economic growth for our region. In the Caribbean, MSMEs are the backbone of the regional private sector, accounting for more than 50% of enterprises and over 50% of GDP. They're also the main source of jobs and a substantial contributor to economic opportunities for the poor, the vulnerable, and the youth in our region. Therefore, MSMEs have a critical role to play in the achievement of those SDGs that we're talking about. The challenge is that our MSMEs require considerable assistance in access to loan and equity financing, which they need to modernize and expand their businesses. They also require assistance to formalize their businesses by keeping proper accounting records and adopting sound business practices. One exciting opportunity for our BMCs to leapfrog to the 2030 agenda is to harness the power of digital technologies that are now part of the fourth industrial revolution. There is increasing evidence of BMC governments and public sector agencies capitalizing on information and communication technologies to reduce administrative burdens, to resolve resource allocation issues, and to improve government efficiency and accessibility. By prompting changes in the legal and regulatory framework, these developments are revolutionizing how government services are provided and how business is conducted within and across borders. Technological advancements are also enabling the modernization of the agricultural sector worldwide. Farmers are embracing these technologies to achieve productivity, efficiency, and profitability improvements and to operate in safer and more environmentally friendly conditions. Similar opportunities now obtained with rapidly improving technology for the greater and more speedy exploitation of indigenous renewable sources of energy. Our BMCs are well positioned to take full advantage of this greater access to technology. As we heard last night, based on the experience of Estonia, which started to build its own information society some 20 years ago, the Caribbean possesses a number of characteristics that make us ideal candidates for digital transformation. Within the last 2 decades, we have made great strides as a region in advancing the uptake and use of ICTs, largely due to liberalization of the telecom sector and the increased competition in service markets. The average share of individuals using the internet in our BMCs jumped from 24% to 59% between 2005 and 2016. Earlier, I drew attention to inadequate access to finance as a factor that constrained the development of MSMEs and other competitive sectors. While this still remains valid, many small businesses and individuals who were previously unbanked are now gaining access to financial services thanks to new products being rolled out in our BMCs by fintech companies. Financial inclusion continues to advance with the advent of new technologies and business models that use telecommunications devices and networks to facilitate payments into the financial system. This is exciting news for MSMEs in particular. For the first time, we may actually now have the tools that allow everyone to participate in economic development via the formal financial system. Modern technologies can revolutionize the way we learn, as we have already heard, how we equip students and workers with 21st century skills, and how we deploy technology in poor, underserved, and remote communities. New technology is able to accommodate access by everyone to the same level and quality of teaching, irrespective of ability to pay, location, or other limiting factors. Let us not miss this wonderful opportunity to truly democratize education once and for all in our region. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just outlined some key actions that our BMCs need to take or pursue with greater intensity so that the goals of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda can remain within our reach. I would like to now turn to an examination of the role that CDB can play in helping our BMCs to realize these goals. At the CDB, we continuously re-examine our business model to determine its suitability for serving our BMCs effectively in the context of a changing global landscape. The preferred business model will ensure that the bank's operations are undergirded by higher levels of efficiency and effectiveness. As a financial institution which issues debt on the international capital markets, we maintain a strong capital position to retain the credibility of both our investors and also the international rating agencies. That is a requirement for an institution of our type. Recognizing the changing external environment, we have taken preemptive action and introduced a multifaceted transformation program which incorporates a set of key internal reforms. The objective is to strengthen CDB's resilience to external shocks and to improve operational efficiency and effectiveness. We have started the process for a new strategic plan to cover the period 2020 to 2024. The proposed strategic framework to be discussed with our governors tomorrow was informed by an independent survey of key stakeholders who stressed the need for CDB to be more responsive to its clients, to build a larger loan portfolio, and to improve its disbursement performance. Vox populi, they say, es vox Dei. We need to listen to our customers more. This is valuable feedback, which demands urgent attention from the bank. To resolve these and other burning issues, CDB is carrying out a comprehensive review of its main business processes. This review is emphasizing redesign of processes which affect the time taken to appraise and approve projects, and to supervise and disburse funds for the projects which are under implementation. In the business process reviews, the use of digital technology is being examined and will be deployed where appropriate. Once these processes have been re-engineered, the organizational structure of the bank will be redesigned to enhance the overall efficiency and effectiveness of our institution. We intend to use digital and other emerging technologies where appropriate to become a more customer-centric institution. In that regard, in 2018, we began a process of restructuring our bank's information technology support by the recruitment of staff and the acquisition of new digital infrastructure. Already, the benefits are being realized, mainly in the areas of collaboration and operational efficiencies. We will also be mainstreaming digital technologies into our project design. This will require us to view all project proposals through a digital lens. In this way, we will use modern technologies and practices for best results and maximum project impact for beneficiaries. We are determined to play a bigger role in unleashing the potential of MSMEs in our region. CDB's approach to galvanizing financing for MSMEs will be centered around the creation of a pool of funds which is off CDB's OCR balance sheet, that is our ordinary capital balance sheet. These funds will be used to provide loans and technical assistance to MSMEs. Furthermore, partial credit guarantees will be made available to incentivize financial institutions in countries to lend to these small enterprises. Our intention is to develop an appropriate ecosystem within which small businesses can truly flourish. Part of that ecosystem must be development of junior stock exchanges in countries on which these small businesses can also list. They will have access to equity capital, which will enable them to grow and to morph into larger businesses. CDB is prepared to provide financial assistance and technical assistance to get these junior exchanges going. Jamaica's experience proves that generous tax holidays can be a powerful stimulus for galvanizing small businesses to list on the stock exchanges. I recommend it to you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to also admit at this point that the way forward will not be without its challenges and its setbacks. However, opportunities abound. Our BMCs sit on the cusp of a metamorphosis that encompasses digital transformation, unleashing the power of the private sector, including MSMEs, and among other things, through democratizing education. With the assistance and support of CDB, working alongside our development partners, ladies and gentlemen, this could well become our moonshot moment. As we in the Caribbean look to the future and the realization of these bold aspirations, the Road March winning words of the indomitable Trinidadian Calypso Rose, "Give me more tempo," can serve as our call to action. We can leapfrog to the realization of the SDGs by 2030 once we find the right melody, work in harmony, and pick up the tempo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that call to action, for that call to pick up the tempo, give me more tempo with the CDB and with the governors. We appreciate your statement and we welcome what you have said to us about the development of the bank and our development generally. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I now invite the Acting Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and Minister of Finance, Honorable Colum Imbert, who is also my friend, because he came out today, and today, as you know, is a national holiday. So I am very appreciative of him being here, and I invite the Prime Minister Acting of Trinidad and Tobago, Colum Imbert, to address you.
Thank you, Camille. Truer words never spoken. Distinguished heads of government, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Premier of Montserrat, regional ministerial colleagues, fellow members of the Parliament and Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, Minister of Planning and Development, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, Secretary for Finance, Tobago House of Assembly, the Honorable Joel Jack, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. William Warren Smith, distinguished governors and members of the Board of Directors of the CDB, members of the Diplomatic Corps, vice presidents and other members of staff of the CDB, permanent secretaries and other members of staff of the Public Service of Trinidad and Tobago, delegates and guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. On behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and our government, and on my own behalf as a citizen of the Caribbean community, I extend a warm welcome to you on behalf of our substantive Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, at the opening of the 49th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank. Trinidad and Tobago is honored to host once again this Board of Governors meeting. The theme of this year's meeting, transformation, is most appropriate given our current development context. As you will have heard from the President, we're at a critical juncture in the development of our region. We're building and strengthening resilience to external and internal vulnerabilities is of utmost importance for putting our development on a sustained basis. Just let me digress. Whereas the rate of growth in the Caribbean region is not as high as China or India for that matter, I still think we're doing very well in terms of global economic threats to be growing, whether it's at 1% or 2%. I think this is a great achievement of the Caribbean region. And we must transform our societies to points where, as small island developing states, our growth is robust and inclusive. New means of financing are regularly sourced. Our states become more climate resilient. We must also harness the vast potential of the ocean, the so-called blue economy, to boost economic growth and tackle unemployment and food security. We must innovate and utilize new and green technologies and have an environmentally conscious population. As a people, we have to embrace a common vision of where we want this transformational process to take us and how we intend to arrive at that destination. If we were to trace the evolution of the Caribbean region, we would realize that much of our accomplishments were based on the strength and foresight of those who came here before us and those who were already here, namely our forefathers. Is it not possible that we can carve out another phase in that same evolutionary pathway? But this must be a collective goal, not for one nation, but for the region as a whole. What would a transformed region look like? I ask you to let your imagination roam and to travel to what today you may think are impossible outcomes. What can our Caribbean children, our future innovative leaders, expect to see 20 years from now? Here are just a few initial examples of what we should aspire to accomplish. Firstly, a region that is energy efficient. The Caribbean is one of the world's largest untapped sources of renewable energy, with potential in solar, wind, geothermal, and marine energy. Transformation will entail the encouragement of the use of renewables, energy efficiency, energy conservation, in an effort to reduce dependence on fossil fuels, enhance energy security and stability, improve the economy's competitiveness, and achieve greater environmental sustainability. And let me digress again. You may have heard all of this before many times, but I do recall when I was looking at the European Union economy and looking at renewable energy transformation in that part of the world, I was surprised to learn that many European countries already produce more than 50% of their energy from renewable sources. And they, in fact, had a plan to achieve 20% of energy from renewable sources by the year 2020, which is next year. And many, if not all of them, have already achieved that target or are very close to it. So if they can do it, why can't we? Secondly, a region which leverages its coastal and marine resources to generate sustained growth, unlocking the great potential of fishing, tourism, and shipping industries. Transformation towards this blue economy will proffer the Caribbean with a far more diversified productive base. And again, to digress, I heard the President talk about CRIF. And just a word to the wise, to other governments of the Caribbean, look carefully at the formula utilized by CRIF in formulating your insurance cover. Make sure that you get value for money. We in Trinidad and Tobago have made adjustments this year to ensure that we get maximum returns from our insurance premiums, our substantial insurance premiums that we pay to CRIF. Thirdly, a reality where we have transitioned to the monetization of our creative industries. We are producers of a major regional export art form based on the products of our creative and cultural energies such as calypso, reggae, and various other genres of music and our local cuisines. Let us not forget our niches, such as fine rum, And I must say, as a rum connoisseur myself, Caribbean rum is the best in the world. Organic chocolates, it's true. Organic chocolates and specialized branded liqueurs from Trinidad and Tobago, to the famous spices of Grenada, as well as our unique fashion styles, which can compete on the worldwide stages. Fourthly, a region that has food security. We have drifted away from our agricultural heritage, thus leading us to all become too heavily dependent on food imports. Our tastes have changed. We now prefer foreign imported food. We must see the need for the long-term value of investing in modern farming methods, which shall not only reduce our import bills, but make our nations become more self-reliant. In a world where natural disasters are so prevalent, we must be able to feed ourselves. Robust economies which are climate resilient and technologically. I must say the Caribbean has a tremendous capacity to rebuild itself after disastrous hurricanes. Tremendous capacity. I don't think the world understands how damaged we are from hurricanes and how quickly we rebuild ourselves. We need to encourage and support entrepreneurs throughout their journey and see initial business failures not as a total loss, but stepping stones to success. I was particularly interested in a recommendation made by the President looking at the Jamaican experience with respect to tax holidays for startups and small businesses, and it is something I think worthy of consideration in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for that advice, President. Institutions which are also the linchpin for our growth and which facilitate development. As such, our institutions must be flexible and responsive to ever-evolving global environment and global threats, new demands placed on us. The modernization of institutions to become responsive, inclusive, participatory in their decision-making is also crucial for ensuring the principles of good governance are upheld and strengthened. Strong and independent public institutions also promote openness, equality, integrity in public life, freedom of information, which build public trust and respect for the rule of law. Institutions facilitate the implementation of transformative programs supported by smart policies which enable a government to tackle more effectively a country's vulnerabilities and challenges. But transformation must go beyond policy changes and address the root causes of economic, social, political, and environmental problems and inequities, and not just the symptoms. Therefore, adopting progressive values, attitudes, and behaviors are foundational to the transformation of our economies. These progressive cultural factors have been shown to support and to catalyze development in many countries. They include observing the rule of law, placing a high value on entrepreneurship and innovation, creating and being aware of new technologies, investing in education, which promotes creativity and autonomy, encouragement and reward for competition and frugality, understanding the importance of savings. It's up to us as leaders to seize the opportunities for transformation by forging alliances which will be needed to drive implementation at the national, regional, and global levels. There are a wider range of global initiatives and partnerships available from organizations such as the Caribbean Development Bank and other regional institutions which aim to support progressive change. As advanced by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, one of the paramount goals for us as small island developing states is resilience building. But this can't be an individual country effort. The international community has provided us with a framework in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with the well-known 17 goals to address global challenges. The pathway considers the reality of our small island developing states. We have a Caribbean single market economy as a regional strategy. And I mean, I've been in public life now for how long? 28 years. And I've been hearing about this Caribbean single market economy since I was first elected in 1991. We must work harder to make this a reality. It will propel our development. Now is the time more than ever to accelerate and strengthen the pace of implementation of the CSME, as together we can more effectively address global challenges. Recently, regional unity was demonstrated with the CARICOM position on the Venezuelan migrant issue. We have a legal international organ, the UN Charter, which governs how we operate in this world. It is there to maintain order and to protect the rights of all. Contravention of these international agreements could generate even greater problems for our countries and the region. It is thus important for us to continue to foster regional integration so that we may overcome obstacles as a united entity. The Caribbean Development Bank, as a long-standing regional development partner, plays a key role in the region's transformation efforts. I'm told that transformation is the third stage of a three-pronged approach by the bank to address our development challenges, starting with vulnerability, followed by resilience building, and now transformation. The bank has repeatedly demonstrated its commitment to the development of the borrowing member countries and is well poised to lead the efforts towards building a resilient and prosperous Caribbean. I wish to thank the Caribbean Development Bank for its commitment and support of the region's development thrust over the past 49 years, and I look forward to the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the bank next year. The region will indeed join with you in next year as you commemorate your 50th anniversary. This is a historic milestone for the bank and by extension the region. The celebration happens at an opportune time as the bank is also in the process of preparing a new strategic plan for the period 2020 to 2024. And I wish to urge the bank to use this opportunity to think outside the box. What we need is the creation of new ideas about how the CDB could be more efficient and effective, not only as a lending institution, but as a mechanism to assist countries to navigate through the increasingly global environment and pursue relevant transformation strategies. In Trinidad and Tobago, our government has taken decisive action to have economic, social, and environmental transformation in Trinidad and Tobago. We've engaged in significant fiscal consolidation and enhanced revenue generation. It has not been easy. But as you may have heard, after 3 difficult years, we have stabilized our own economy after the collapse of oil prices in 2014, 2015. And I note that throughout the region, other countries are struggling with their own challenges, whether they are based on, their economies are based on tourism or otherwise. But I urge all of you to keep at it. I think the region, in my opinion, is doing extremely well in the face of global economic challenges. The transformational agenda is articulated in the National Development Strategy, Vision 2030. This is our Vision 2030. It charts the path to take the country from our present state to a developed country status by the year 2030. We recognize that this requires not only economic transformation, but transformation which at its core is also social, cultural, and institutional in nature. We have provided long-term direction for all our stakeholders, government ministries, agencies, the private sector, civil society, labor, youth, and all our citizens. Everyone in Trinidad and Tobago has a part to play, and even you, our regional partners, have a part to play in our transformation process. In closing, I wish to say that transformation is a process and a radical change in how we do things. It starts with us. We must all work together to harness our unique historical experiences, which have served to mold our creative energies and self-expressions in order to capitalize on our entrepreneurial capacity. Out of our entrepreneurial spirit, have we not shown the world that we can take a discarded oil drum and transform it into a first-class musical instrument, our well-known steel pan? Born of that same entrepreneurial spirit, have we not given the world the unique music styling known as reggae? So if we could do that, the sky is the limit. I therefore challenge our regional leaders, technocrats, and delegates to strive towards developing cohesive and meaningful policies, programs, and projects to affect the transformation we all need. Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm sure the region as well, looks forward to the CDB playing a more prominent role in our transformation agenda. I hope your deliberations at this meeting produce a strategic framework to direct this transformation. Once again, I bid you a successful and productive stay in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is the celebration of Eid al-Fitr. So to all our Muslim brothers and sisters, Eid Mubarak. I thank you.
Thank you very kindly, Acting Prime Minister, who has reminded us that the Caribbean has a tremendous capacity to rebuild itself, and that we must all work together to effect the transformation that is so needed as we move from vulnerability to resilience to transformation. Again, thank you very much, Honorable Colum Imbert, Acting Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and Minister of Finance. Ladies and gentlemen, I move now to the report of the Procedures Committee by the Governor for the British Overseas Territories. I now call on the reporting member, the Governor for the British Overseas Territories, to give the report of the Procedures Committee. I call on the Honorable Premier of Montserrat. But before I do that, I would like to allow the Acting Prime Minister to leave. And I want to take this opportunity again to thank him for being here, but he must bid us adieu. Thank you. Come with you. Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you. As chairman, I just designated the president to accompany our prime minister. So I now call on Honorable Donaldson Romeo to report on the Procedures Committee.
Thank you very much. Protocol already well and repeatedly established. I will proceed with the report. Madam Chair, Governors, and President, staff of CDB, the Procedures Committee met on Tuesday, June 4th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m. and the report of this committee dated June 5th, 2019 is before you. I have the honor, Madam Chair, to table the report on behalf of the committee and move that the Board of Governors adopt the recommendations contained therein. But, Madam Chair, before doing so, before presenting the report, I too would like to say thanks to our host government, Trinidad and Tobago, for the excellent arrangements which have been made for our stay from entering to this moment, and I'm quite sure beyond. My stay in terrific and tranquil Trinidad and Tobago has been made comfortable and memorable. In fact, with respect to your invitation, I must let you know that elections are soon due in Montserrat, but God willing, I shall be back once more. And very soon, as Premier, that is. Madam Chair, as I said before, the Procedures Committee met at 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, June 4th, 2019. Representatives of Trinidad and Tobago, also representing Haiti, Jamaica, the Commonwealth of Bahamas, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, the People's Republic of China, Germany, Guyana, Italy, Mexico, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, also representing Grenada. The Commonwealth of Dominica, also representing St. Lucia. Belize, Montserrat, also representing Anguilla. The British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, and the Turks and Caicos Islands were present at the meeting. Firstly, Madam Speaker, in submitting the report regarding provisions relating to the conduct of the meeting, the committee recommends that the provisions relating to the conduct of the meeting embodied in paper BG 49-2 be approved. Secondly is the agenda for the meeting, and the committee recommends the adoption of the provisional agenda as circulated in paper BG 49-3. Regarding the items of the agenda, the committee reports on the following recommendations. Item A, annual report for 2018. Governors who wish to do so may comment on the annual report in their statements. Item B, audited financial statements and reports of the independent auditors 2018. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 49-4, and the audited financial statements and reports of the independent auditors contained in the annual report, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Audited Financial Statements and Reports of the Independent Auditors 2018 be adopted. Item C, allocation of the net income for the year ended December 31st, 2018. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 49-5, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Allocation of the Net Income for the year ended December 31st, 2018 be adopted. Item D, administrative budget for the year ending December 31st, 2019. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 49-6, entitled Administrative Budget for the year ending December 31st, 2019, and recommends that the governors note the budget. Item E, expenses of governors and alternates attending meetings of the Board of Governors or committees thereof. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 49-7, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Expenses of Governors and Alternates attending meetings of the Board of Governors or committees thereof be adopted. Item F, place and date of the 50th 2020 annual meeting. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 49-8, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Place and Date of the 50th 2020 annual meeting be adopted. Item G, election of officers of the Board of Governors. The committee recommends that the Governor for the Commonwealth of Bahamas be elected as chairperson, and the governors of Colombia and the United Kingdom be elected as vice chair to hold their respective offices until the election of officers at the end of the 50th 2020 annual meeting of the Board of Governors. Lastly, under any other business, there being no other business, the Procedures Committee meeting ended at 10 a.m. Madam Chair, there ends the report of the Procedures Committee dated June 5th, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly, Governor Premier of Montserrat, and thank you also for your kind words. And we look forward to seeing you after the elections in the position of Premier of Montserrat. Governors, I take it that you are in agreement with the report. Are there any comments? Given that, I declare that the report is in fact approved and will be signed by my good self and the Governor for the British Overseas Territories as a reporting member. Thank you very kindly. Governors, ladies and gentlemen, I now declare the adjournment of this opening ceremony, and I ask that governors, alternate governors, and directors remain in this room for the official photograph. And I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending, and we are very grateful for your attention. Thank you very kindly. This meeting is now ended. Could I indicate that Mr. Forsyth has some housekeeping matters that he would like to give us?
Thank you, Chair. During the course of today and tomorrow, delegates are asked to confirm their departure dates with the liaison officers situated in the foyer opposite the boardroom, that's at the head of the stairs. Please give this your attention as we try to mobilize transportation to Piarco International Airport. As soon as the group photographs are taken, governors are asked to assemble in the lobby for the off-site lunch. For other delegates, lunch will be held in the Port of Spain ballroom. Persons who are involved in the accompanying persons program are also asked to assemble in the lobby at 12 p.m. for departure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very kindly. This opening ceremony is now ended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governors, could you please come to the head table?
The Caribbean region is one of the world's most disaster-prone areas and is particularly vulnerable to climate-related risks.